What the counterintelligence program did was do more than observe. It waged a secret war in the civil rights movement. There are books about COINTELPRO. It talks about informers around Malcolm X, around Martin Luther King, the American Indian movement, and the Black Panther Party. I opened the book talking about a Panther officer who I looked up to, someone named Yewa Sudan. And Yewa was a Marine Corps veteran, a really handsome man, a muscular man. Taught me everything about being a Panther. I opened the book talking about chapter 1, how I was blindfolded in a Panther safe house, learning how to take apart a gun and put it together by touch. Yewa not only taught me about weapons and hand-to-hand combat, how to make pancakes, he even taught me the right way to rap to a young girl in the Panthers, a Panther teenager. I was standing in the Panther office one day. I had on my leather coat. I had been in there. I'm 15 years old, and a young Panther sister who was about 17 walks by, and I said, "What's happening, baby?" Yeah, I see some of the women nodding already. She wheeled on me. She said, "First of all, brother, the revolution is happening, and my name is not Baby." And I walked away. Oh boy. Yeah, okay, I did. Let's get applause on that from the women. Afeni Shakur pulls me aside, Tupac's mom. And she said, "Jamal, what are you doing?" She said, "If you want someone in the struggle, and if you want someone in the Panther Party to pay attention to you, sisters don't care about all that slick stuff that you're learning from the guys on the street corner. If you want to impress somebody in the Black Panther Party, you have to be a hard worker. You have to do it for real, so that the next time when you greet a sister, first of all, you don't say, 'What's happening, baby?' You say, 'All power to the people, my sister.'" That was our greeting in the Panther Party. All power to the people. And the crowd would say, "Power to the people." And the Panthers would say, "That means black power for black people." And people would say, "Right on." And we'd say, "That means white power for white people. And that means brown power for brown people. Yellow power for yellow people. Red power for red people." People go, "White power for white people." Yeah, people, the Panthers would say, if you talk about what's going on in the country, don't have power. When there are more white people on welfare than there are black people, when people are being exploited and oppressed all across the country, when we have rights and issues that deal with women and deal with immigrants and deal with people making different choices, we're talking about all power to all the people, not divide and conquer. We're talking about the small quantity of the haves oppressing the have-nots. So you got to say, "Power to the people, my sister." And then when she says, "Right on, brother, how are you?" And then you have to say, and you have to mean it because it's true, "Well, my sister, you see, I'm really tired. I was up at 5 o'clock this morning working in the breakfast program. Then from there, I was organizing in my school. Then from there, I put in a couple of hours in the health clinic. Then from there, I did community patrol. Then from there, I was back, packing the Panther paper so we could go out and sell it tomorrow. Sister, it's about 10 o'clock at night. I've been exhausted, but guess what? I'm going to sleep about 3 or 4 hours, and I'm going to do it again because I'm a good brother in the struggle." And then she said, the sister might say, "Well, brother, in between all that struggling, why don't you stop by for a little dinner?" Maybe. Well, I'm on the go so much, actually keeping this promise and being a good young brother in the struggle, that I'm barely keeping up with my chores. And Grandma is saying, "Boy, when are you going to clean the room? When are you going to trim the hedges? When are you going to fix that light?" My adopted grandfather had died a few years earlier, and I never knew my dad. And I would always make excuses. "I'm going to the meeting, I'm going to school. This early, I have an activity. This late, but I'm being a Panther." So she did what a lot of parents and grandparents did. Finally got tired of seeing my room a mess, went in there to start to clean. Went under to change my sheets, and in between the mattress and the box spring, where most teenage boys keep, their children in the room, but she pulls out all of this Black Panther information. I'm talking about the Panther papers, all of these books, and if you look online or if you've ever gone to exhibits, those Panther newspapers had some things that are collectible art then, but really shocking stuff to people that weren't Panthers in those days. The police would be portrayed as pigs with flies buzzing around their head. School children would be going to school with books on one hand, barefoot African school children, AK-47s on the other. "Revolution in our lifetime" would be the headline. And Grandma was a good religious church woman. Her parents had been slaves. And I came in and set up on the kitchen table was a stack of Panther newspapers, was the Holy Bible, and a belt. All she had to do was light a candle, and that would have looked like a mafia altar. I came in and I froze in my tracks. And she said, boy, what is this? And I said, Grandma, you was in my room. She said, don't even start. She said, what is this mess here? She said, because right now, I don't know whether to bless you with this belt or kill you with this Bible. I tried to explain, there was no explaining. She forbid me to go back to the Panthers. Obedient grandson that I was, I went back one more time. And that was to let Afeni Shakur and her husband Lumumba and Yewa, who was my section leader, that was like my sergeant, let them know that I could not come back anymore because my grandmother had violated my rights, searched my room, and tripping like she was some kind of Uncle Tom. Well, Afeni almost jumped in my chest with 2 feet. She said, never talk about your grandmother like that. Understand the generation and the time that she comes from, and that you haven't been completely honest, and that she's trying to love you and protect you the best way she knows how. Well, my section leader volunteered to come to the house. He showed up. He had on his Panther leather jacket, but none of the Panther buttons. He had on a tie. I didn't even know we were allowed to wear ties. He greeted her. Grandma was named Jessie Mae Baltimore. She was from North Carolina. And he said, good evening, Mother Baltimore. Oh, he got some points because she was an elder in the church. We sit down. He's drinking coffee, eating some of Grandma's pound cake. And he said, Mother Baltimore, I know you said that Jamal, excuse me, Eddie, as soon as he said that. I'm Jamal now, why are you calling me by my slave name? But I know you said he can't come back to the Panther office. He says, and ma'am, if that's the case, then we have to obey you. We need to listen because you're his grandmother, but you're my elder. If you tell me to do anything right now, I need to listen. But ma'am, I know that he's giving you a hard time. So if it's okay, even if he can't come back, I'd like to keep an eye on him. If you say his curfew is 9 o'clock, and if he's not in the door by 8:45, ma'am, I will take off this garrison belt buckle and I'll whip his butt. And I'm sitting in the side chair going, what are you doing? You're supposed to come in and do like the Panther Jedi. Mind you, what are you? He said, ma'am, I know he could be doing better in school. So if you want him to bring you an 85 on the next algebra test, if he doesn't bring you a 90, I will take these size 13 combat boots and I'll give him a swift kick in the butt. And I'm on the side going, why did you even come? I'm going to be in trouble till I'm 50 now. But Grandma spoke the truth. She said, you know, it is really hard raising a young man without a father. He never knew his dad, and his grandfather passed a few years ago. And I do my best. But you seem like a good man. So if you promise to keep an eye on him, make sure he does what he's supposed to do around the house and school, that he listens to me when I ask him to do some things around the house, then I'll let him go back. And I did. And I worked really hard to kind of keep this promise. And about 6 weeks later, the doorbell rings to Grandma's house. About 4 o'clock in the morning, when I go down, police are there, and a police SWAT team kicks in the door, and 30 cops with rifles and machine guns come in, and they handcuff me. I just turned 16, and they take me away to prison. And I'm charged along with 20 other Panthers in a conspiracy case that became known as the Panther 21 case. Afeni Shakur, Tupac's mom, was part of that case, and we're charged with conspiracy to plant bombs around New York City, to attack police officers, to wage a war of terror, which seemed outrageous to us. And we had some amazing young lawyers that came. William Kunstler was the lead attorney. And as we tried to find out, and we were whisked into courtroom, read all of these charges, and bail was set at $100,000. Which is a lot of money now, but imagine in 1969. They might as well have said $5 million. Because let me remind you who we were. We were students. We were workers. We were returning Vietnam veterans. We were people just getting out of prison. Those are the people who came to the Black Panther Party, the disenfranchised, the people who were Fanon called the wretched of the earth, people getting out of prison, coming back from the military, women, students, welfare mothers. As we tried to figure out, and we were facing 367 years. That's the kind of prison sentence that you can't serve in one time. If you believe, whether you believe in reincarnation, you know, it's the kind of sentence that if you do come back, they find you and go, oh no, you come with us, baby. You have more time to do. As we tried to figure out what the case was about, we found out that there were two cops who were part of an elite police unit called the Bureau of Special Services. One man had been Malcolm X's bodyguard. He was with Malcolm X when he left the Nation of Islam, when Malcolm formed the Organization of African American Unity. He was on the stage when Malcolm was shot down. He gave him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. He was an undercover cop and no one knew it. Malcolm X drew his last breath from someone who was sent to spy on him. And the other person who was part of it was my mentor. The person who came to my grandmother's house. The person who trained me. The person who made sure I got to the breakfast program on time. That was how counterintelligence worked. I came out on bail, became a spokesman for the Panther Party, and one of the youngest national spokesmen, and then went on a journey in terms of speaking for other Panthers and organizing. Eventually went back to prison, where I spent a total of 9.5 years. But when I walked in the door, it's interesting, something that had happened 15 years earlier happened to me again in the form of a prisoner who was doing life. An older black man who came to me and he said, young blood, you can serve this here time, or you can let this time serve you. And I reminded me of that day when I walked to the Panther office. And I began spending time in the prison library. I took advantage of all the courses. They had a wonderful program. The University of Kansas came in. Dedicated professors would come in. And you had to do your work detail, but you could go to school full-time at night. And you had professors who would come in at night and make sure that we worked just as hard, if not harder, than the people on main campus. One professor in particular was an English professor, Professor Johnson. Petite white woman, about 70 years old. She's in the room by herself with men who were doing time for bank robbery, for kidnapping, for murder. And if you turned in a paper that wasn't right, Professor Johnson would mark it up and stand in front of you and say, this is terrible, I know you could do better. And you know how the men responded? They were afraid. We would stand in the yard going, what can we do? One day Professor Johnson came in with the King James Version of the Bible, and she had redlined it and found some grammatical errors. Look at this. And we're in the back going like, man, she's redlining the Bible. She's got God in study hall. What do we have coming? There was one guy named Bo. Big Bo was doing life because he had shot 2 bank guards and 2 cops. You know, he had done 7 bank robberies. He spoke in basic grunts. Big Bo was standing, he was afraid of nobody. He could knock you out with one punch. He was standing in the yard one day, and Big Bo was looking depressed. We said, Bo, are you okay? It was almost like cautiously talking to him because he had such a temper. And he was saying, I'm all right. Big Bo, is everything cool, man? We knew his mother was not doing so well. Is your mom okay? No, yeah, you know, my mom fine. We know he was up for parole. Big Bo, you got bad news from the parole officer? They gave you another 10 years? Nah, man, you know, I didn't even see the parole board yet. Well, what's the matter, Big Bo? All right, man, I'm gonna tell you, man, it's Professor Johnson, man. She gave me a C, man. That's gonna mess up my whole grade point now. We learned because we understood that knowledge was power, and we learned because we had people from the outside that were unafraid to come in. They understood that if you come into a community, whether it's a poor community, whether it's a barrio, whether it's a reservation, whether it's a white slum, if you come in with love and with the right intention and with the tools of liberation, and I'm not talking about guns, I'm talking about food, I'm talking about jobs, I'm talking about love, I'm talking about opportunity that you can make a difference in people's lives. When I was in prison, the United States of America was 3rd in the world of the number of people that it had incarcerated. 3rd behind South Africa and the then Soviet Union. Now we are number one. Over 2 million people in prison. And the programs that I availed myself of that allowed me to graduate from the University of Kansas, of KU, with honors, with not 1 but 2 degrees, to be even now an esteemed alum of KU when I go back to the campus, to allow me to pursue the path that I am as a director, as a writer, as an activist, as a poet, as an Oscar nominee, as a tenured professor, as a former chair, and a full professor at Columbia University. Those programs don't exist. Even though every indicator is that the rate of recidivism drops dramatically proportionally to the amount of education that someone gets. There's no secret to that. That people who are in prison because they are not educated and poor, don't have opportunity in the first place, can benefit from an education, and then those embracing arms that can help them to become productive members of society. In Chicago last year, the murder rate topped 500. And they were talking about what to do. And they had panels. And they had people talking about what they can do about the murder rate. And a pastor who runs a church in the heart of the area where the shooting stopped saying, we need books here, we need jobs here, we need education here, we don't need more cops. We're building more prisons, but we're not building schools. The state of California last year built 1 new institution or more facilities of higher education. They built 15 new prisons. I used to say, and I've been corrected by this data, that as we speak right now, that there are more young black and brown men in prison than there are in colleges. I stand corrected in that number. There are more young black men in colleges than there are in prison. So that's encouraging news. But there are more black men in prison today in America than there were in slavery at the height of slavery in the 1800s. We have work to do. These are our brothers and our sisters. These are people who, if we had that kind of aggressive love that we heard about in the Panther Party, that were in the movement, that drove the Civil Rights Movement, that made the Freedom Riders come from all over the country to protest injustice in the country, that we could be making a difference. There is an epidemic in terms of the AIDS and HIV virus. The #1 target right now is young black women. We have to educate, we have to fight. The highest level of unemployment are young people in this country. We talk about that number and being dissatisfied with it hovering around 7 or 8%, but that number is double and triple with young people of all colors. What are we doing for our children? We started with that question. What is that answer? Well, I came out and I was fortunate to do the work that I do in the community. And to start a theater program. I had started a theater program in prison and then continued to do that work outside. And I just kind of, as I close to the end, I want to leave some time for a couple of questions. I'm sitting in the yard, and the same man that gave me that advice a week or 2 after I was in prison came up to me, and he had heard, he said, "Young blood, you was in the Panthers out there, wasn't you?" And I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Uh-huh." He said, "And you did karate and stuff when you were out." Well, that's true. I started learning karate in the Panthers, and I had become a black belt. I said, "Uh-huh." He said, "And you did plays and stuff on the outside." And I had become an actor, and I was part of the black arts movement, but that wasn't like common prison knowledge. So I said, "Yes," and he went, "Huh." And he walked away. And I thought I was in some kind of trouble. They have this thing in prison called the convict code. And the convict code supersedes politics, gang affiliation, and it's, don't steal from another convict, don't tell on another convict, do your own time. But there's all kinds of ways that you could violate the convict code. The same way we have, 200,000 laws in America to basically help us figure out 10 commandments. There's all kinds of ways. So the next day he comes back, and I look up and I'm reading a book, and he comes back with 2 of the biggest black guys in the joint. They looked like NFL linebackers, except they had bullet wounds and knife wounds. They looked like death had struck them. In fact, that was their nickname, Death and Struck. And I said, "This is it." I'm going to get killed because I did plays on the outside. He said, young blood, about those plays. I said, yes. He said, why don't you do something for Black History Month? I done worked it out with the warden. And he walked away. So I go to the prison library. And I go to the theater section, and there's only one black play. Well, there were only two plays. It was Romeo and Juliet and Raisin in the Sun by Lorraine Hansberry. And I read the play, and tears come to my eyes, not just because Lorraine Hansberry is such a wonderful playwright and plays beautiful, but there was women in the play. It's a play about a black grandmother trying to save her family. And I come back to Mr. Cody, and I said, Mr. Cody, I don't think I can do this play. It's the only play that I found, and there's a lot of women in the play. And he looks at me, he says, young blood, it's cool. Just look around the yard, pick out about 5 guys, we'll put a dress on them. I was like, so I wrote a play. This is really how I became a playwright. And then he got me a rehearsal space, and he also got me my cast. Mr. Cody really wanted to be a producer. Guess what my cast was? It was Deaf and Struck. They had no interest in acting. But Mr. Cody said, do it, we did it. They didn't know how to act, so I had to teach them how to act. I didn't have much time, Michelle, so I started teaching them how to act through improvisation. We do a scene, and I'd say, freeze. And one guy would look at the other, and I would go, Deaf, Struck, that was great. Ooh, that was improvisation. Deaf, you looked at Struck, you said you're going to stab him 8 times. Struck, you looked at Deaf, you said you're going to bash his skull in with a dumbbell. And I really believed you. Ooh, I was in the moment. Now, you two guys talking, when actors talk on stage, that's called dialogue. When an actor's going on and on, like I am, sounding stupid, that's called a monologue. But you guys just did dialogue. Say it, guys, dialogue. And Deaf looked at Struck, and he was like, I wasn't dialoguing. I don't like you, I'm gonna kill you. No, okay, wait, stop, guys, freeze, please. Freeze, let's go back to our centering exercise. Work with me, breathe, you're a tree. Come on, feel the roots. Put your arms up, breathe, you're a tree. At that very moment, the guys from La M, the Mexican Mafia, came in. Now, the prison is segregated because the men segregate themselves. You had the Aryan Brotherhood, La M, the black guerrilla family. Nobody ever went to each other's section of the yard. If you did, you'd get stabbed. If somebody had a beef, you'd get stabbed. Everything was solved through violence. And the 2 guys who came in from La M had about 8 murders since they were in prison. Because they were doing life. What can you do? They killed somebody, they were like, okay, give me some more time. I said, you want my license too? The 2 guys who came in, Tito and Raphael, toughest guys in the prison. They walk in and we all have the same thought. The guys from the Mexican Mafia have left their section of the yard and come up here. Who are they here to kill? And so I'm working with the guys. Not everybody wants to be cool because you can't show fear. So now my 2 guys are like, but we all are looking out the corner of my eyes. My 2 big guys are going like, okay, Jamal, look, okay, look, I'm a tree. I got my arms up, I sway, and I'm a palm tree. And I'm watching Tito, who's the leader of La M, out the corner of my eye. And he's getting madder and madder. And then after about 10 minutes, he gets up really angry. And he comes up to me, he was like, yo, homie, can I speak to you a second? And I was like, damn, it's it. I knew doing plays was a bad idea. This is really it. And he pulls me to the side. And he's like, yo, S.A., there's no secrets here at Leavenworth Homes. We heard what you were doing, and I had to come see for myself. And I'm going to tell you something, S.A. I've been sitting here for about 10 minutes, and I've been watching. You listen to me, man. You listen to me good. That guy you're working with, S.A., that guy, that effing guy, no, Holmes, he's not feeling his character. So I said, why don't you get in? And they were great, so we rewrote the play. Now the Black History Month play was a Black and Latino History Month play. The guys from the Aryan Brotherhood said, go see what the blacks and Mexicans are doing. If they're teamed up, this couldn't be good for us. They said their toughest guy, his name was Red, for Rebel. 6'3", 220 pounds, a black belt in Taekwondo. Red comes up to rehearsal. He comes back 2 hours later. All the guys in the yard surround him. Aryan Brotherhood, bikers, bank robbers, kidnappers. It's like, Red, you up there with the blacks and Mexicans? Reb said, yup. They said, Red, well, what's going on up there? Reb said, they doing a play. And what'd you do about it, Reb? Reb said, well, they give me a part. We became our own section of the yard. And we became a reason while men who weren't talking to one another, who grew up hating one another, started communicating through the arts. So I do understand the power of arts and education. I do understand how we have to use moments like this to create a conversation that reignites a struggle. And I do understand that that struggle is complicated, but at the same time, very simple. I remember seeing a poster in the Panther office saying that at the risk of sounding ridiculous, it was Che Guevara, a speech he had given at the United Nations, at the risk of sounding ridiculous, let me say that revolutionaries are guided by great feelings of love. I submit to you that in the Panther Party, that it wasn't hate for the government that made us get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go across town when it was freezing to serve kids that weren't our kids. That it wasn't hate for anyone that made us open those health clinics, that made us work 16, 18 hours a day, that would make you get off the bus when you were tired, headed home, but you saw the police having someone hemmed up against the wall, and you would stop and get in between that cop and that person. Though you had never met them before, you understood that was your brother or your sister. It was love. And if you ask anyone who was in the movement, what really motivated you? What did you believe among all other things? Meet anyone that was in the Panther Party. And I guarantee you, I'm telling you, I guarantee you, that they will answer the question that we were taught to have an undying love and to serve the people. And if we can have that undying love for humanity, for the brothers and sisters in your community and other communities, to look at everyone, regardless to their age, to their race, to their gender, to the color of their skin, to their sexual preferences, and understand that I am not free till they are free, that I am not fed while they are hungry, that I do not have a home while they don't have shelter, that as long as someone is incarcerated, an assistant can build prisons while they shut down schools, that we have work to do. Whether it's just tutoring one person, whether it's feeding one person, whether it's giving a book to one person, we can make change. A young man goes out to a state fair with his family, and he's having a great time. There's a Ferris wheel, there's ponies, there's cotton candy. But the thing that's really got this kid's attention is a guy who's giving away balloons. This old man just comes with his helium tank, and he just hands out balloons. And there's so many kids trying to get these free balloons that a red balloon gets away and it floats up and up and up. And then after a few moments, a green balloon gets away and it floats up and up. And this little kid couldn't take it anymore. He kind of tears through the crowd and he pulls on this old man's leg and he said, "Mr. Balloon Man, did you see that? Did you see that? The green balloon went just as high as the red balloon." And that old man looked down at that little boy and he said, "Son, always remember this. It's not the color on the outside, but the stuff on the inside that will make you rise."